Okay, so what I've basically done here is just gridded out all the different beds across the garden, and this is a great way to obviously start when you can visualize a bird's eye view of the whole of the allotment. And essentially what we've got here is 4 standard beds here, 30-inch, and these run about 5 meters. This one obviously cut off at the edge here because we have a we actually have you know, a nice big bush here essentially. So we've got then 3 raised beds as well as 3 kind of boxed raised beds as well. These are just boxes. They're 30-inch by 30-inch. So one of the key factors when it comes to considering the actual location of specific plants within the garden, I like to incorporate the idea of using 3 key factors, and these 3 factors are water, maintenance, so we have water, maintenance, and the third one is sunlight. So these 3 key factors are going to determine exactly where you want to be placing specific plants within your allotment or market garden. These 3 are for me the crucial things to get right, because the water requirement, the sunlight requirement, once those plants are in the ground, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to change the location of those. And you know, by the time it gets to full season, you may have realized that you made quite a crucial error, which obviously you're not going to be able to resolve until the year after. In terms of the maintenance, this one really is the third of the priorities and not second. Obviously sunlight and water are the crucial ones, but maintenance I have in there. And what we're talking about here is how much maintenance the plant is actually going to require. So if you've got something like lettuce, which you know, may require quite a lot of sunlight and water, however, in terms of maintenance itself, you know, you're going to put that straight into the ground. Obviously if you're doing transplanting, that might take a little bit more effort, but the general rule of thumb, obviously we're going to be going directly sowing into the beds, and therefore, you know, the next time we'll really be maintaining that is when we're pulling them out to harvest them. Alternatively, if you know, we're picking those off opposed to just one harvest, then we will obviously maintain those a little bit more. But really we're not talking about maintenance in that sense in terms of the harvests. We're actually talking about pruning, you know, stuff like cutting off leaves, you know, anything that's going to be you know, amendment to the soil possibly halfway through the actual life cycle of the plant. These are all maintenance factors. So when we're looking at the water and the sunlight, we're literally just talking about what their water requirement and the sunlight requirement is of those particular plants. We can start to look at where the sunlight is going to be more prominent within the land, and where we're going to have partial shade or full shade in that sense. So I know that if we just draw this line here, I know that in the afternoon this area here becomes under shade. From around 2 to 3 p.m. this place will be completely shaded out, and this essentially will be by this tree here, but also by the building that runs along the side of this this land here as well. All this area here is actually open land and has full direct sunlight for the whole course of the day until the evening. So obviously this area here is full sun, and here we have partial shade in the afternoon around 3 p.m. So when we're looking at these areas here, obviously we can see that we have 2 beds which fall under the afternoon shade or partial sun criteria. And the idea is that we're going to plant some plants in here in which will be suitable for partial shade in the afternoon. Of course, many plants like partial shade and is not detrimental when it is only partial. and therefore if you are only dealing with partial shade in the afternoon, shouldn't really be too much of an issue to plant anything in that specific area. Of course, according to my context, we have full sun and some partial shade, so anything we really want to be putting out in the full sun obviously needs to be ideal in that environment. So what we have here, of course, we have 3 raised beds, and this bed here actually has strawberries already in it. So the strawberries, of course, are a perennial, and these won't be getting moved anytime soon. They like their environment there, and obviously I'm not going to be changing the location of that for this year or for the foreseeable. So in here we currently have spinach, which during the winter and spring months is perfect for in there. So we will be keeping that as spinach for the foreseeable. And in here, in the 3rd raised bed, we actually have just sowed out basil. So as you can see here, we've already established 3 beds there, which are all the 3 raised beds, and those will be for the continued of the year. They will be, you know, as per what's written down here. So then what we want to do is I'm dividing these box beds into 4 sections, and each one of these sections will have a pepper plant. I don't do many peppers, and as you can see, this will allow for 12 pepper plants, obviously of different varieties. So maybe I have 3 different varieties, 6 different varieties, who knows. However, these are perfect locations because obviously are in full sun, and also, you know, I'm not doing high quantities, so I don't really want to be putting those in the bigger beds. Obviously if I was doing them in bigger quantities, I wouldn't be putting them in the box beds. Maybe I'd put something like shallots in there or carrots, because they are quite deep beds as they are. Okay, so then we have these allotted up. So we have obviously peppers here, and peppers here of different sorts. So here, of course, we have this shaded bed area. We have some sunlight area in the beds as well as these 3 beds here, which obviously always have full sun. We do have some partial shade in the afternoon down on this area, but overall the bed is a full sun bed. So obviously when we're deciding what we want to be putting in these individual beds, we have to really be thinking about things like airflow as well as these other factors. So when we're talking about the water, we're specifically talking about the water requirement of the plant, but also the access and the access issues for particular plants. So I know, and we'll mark it here, that my water source comes here, and this is where I essentially put in my irrigation, and is essentially where the tap is for any of the water that's going to be coming into the allotment. I will also fill my watering can up from here so I can go around the various beds. Of course, when I'm looking at the pepper plants as well as the strawberries, these will just be hand watered. So this whole area here essentially is a low maintenance area. I won't have to be doing too much. Of course, I'll have to take out the runners at the certain times of the year. However, I will be doing the hand watering, which requires a little bit of maintenance, but nothing too strenuous. So then what we have here is 2 beds, as we said before, which are in partial shade. So what we're going to put here is we're going to put something like a leaf lettuce, in which will require some good amount of sunlight, however won't be affected by having that afternoon shade. So here we will have the leaf lettuce, and again here we'll put in the leaf lettuce. So then we have obviously the 2 beds remaining and 3 beds over here. These beds are exactly the same in dimension. They are all 5 meters by 30 inch, and really this comes to a scenario where we're thinking, what is it that we want to put in these 2 here and these 3 here. Of course, this does take more sunlight throughout the course of the day, because the actual sunlight gets hits this area earlier in the morning, However, maybe takes another half an hour or something before it comes over here. Obviously this is not a flat landscape and you are seeing a bird's eye view. However, we do have different levels within this garden, and therefore the sunlight is different according to different parts of the actual allotment itself. So coming back to the maintenance, I know that basil and spinach are going to be quite a high maintenance plant. So the basil, I will be out there, 2-3 times a week picking leaves, as well as for the harvesting, but also doing some pruning activities, which the basil plant will be quite demanding for me, and I will be there 2 times a week minimum. But I would like to reduce the maintenance in that particular zone, because I know that the basil, I'm going to be pruning that throughout the course of the week, and therefore I don't want to be having to maintain in terms of water as well. So what I will actually do here is I'll just put an I, and this I stands for the irrigation, because I want to minimize the maintenance and all the additional maintenance I have to do on those particular beds, for this particular raised bed, and therefore the irrigation is going to be important to minimize my time any further in terms of actual time on that particular bed. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this up into sections. So I'm going to divide this up, and what I've done here is every 4 squares is 1 meter. So that's made it quite easy, so I could divide this up in half, or I could divide this up in 5 and have 1 meter little sections, and it all depends what you're really wanting to grow inside there. So really what I'd like to put in here is a full sun loving plants. So what I would put in there really is I'm going to put shallots in here, and then in this part here I'm going to put broccoli. And this may have something else in there as well, especially in the early months when the broccoli is not really established, so I may interplant into that section as well. However, of course, broccoli takes up quite a little bit of space, 18 to 24 inch spacing, so I may only get 12-13 broccoli heads actually in there. In this area here, obviously it is a full sun area. This will be patchy sunlight through the trees. And what I would like to put in here is head lettuce. Again, what I'd like to do here, as you can see, is I would like to ideally run the irrigation straight down from here, and I would actually run it into the head lettuce, into the basil, and also into the leaf lettuce sections here. So as you can see already, this makes the water access very easy. I've got a whole section here which is getting provided water through irrigation, and that means I don't have to worry about anything to do with the water except from putting it on the timer and ensuring that everything is functioning properly throughout the course of the season. So we have the water irrigation on all of those beds there. So then what we come down to is, obviously we know that we're going to be planting a lot of tomatoes this season. We have 3 beds here that are 5 meters, and I would like to put the tomatoes in all 3 of these beds. Okay, and there's the same in there. Of course, the tomatoes, again, they're going to require quite a heavy amount of water. We are in a hot and dry landscape, and therefore the water access is going to be something that will be required every day, if not on a couple of occasions per day. So what I'd like to do then is I will run another irrigation piping down here, and then we'll spur those off into the 3 beds. So we'll have also the irrigation here. I also understand that the tomatoes, with the technique that I'll be using, these will be going to 10 or 12 inch spacing, and will be quite a high intensive method of training and growing the tomatoes, and therefore I want to minimize any maintenance on those beds in terms of the water. Of course, if we're dealing with something like the leaf lettuce, where we leave them alone, ideally there's no maintenance there, so I could really do hand watering with the head lettuce, the leaf lettuce. However, in the summer when it does get hot, we want to make sure that the water process is all drilled down really well, and I don't really want to be worrying about the lettuce going to bolt or anything like that. And really the broccoli, the shallots, really I could get away with hand watering those. Those wouldn't be a problem at all. And again, probably for the spinach as well, I could hand water those. However, really I'm going to put those in the irrigation. We'll see about the spinach, maybe I'll spur that off from the basil line. However, the key parts are the tomatoes, the lettuce and the basil as well, because these are all quite they're high concentrate in terms of water, and we need to get as much water on those plants to encourage good growth, but also good transpiration when it does come to the heat of summer. So as you can see, we've established this area here, which we're going to call the low maintenance area. And this part of the plot, obviously it's on the furthest side. I have two access points. Access point essentially 1 and access point 2 is up here. So of course the low maintenance area I want to put right on the other side of the plot, because I won't be going there too often, and I don't want that, I don't want to have to be passing through a low maintenance area in order to get to an area that is, of higher maintenance. So really when it comes down to it, we've got an area here which, is our high maintenance area. So all of our work here is going to be focused around this area here. Most of our work in terms of maintenance. When it comes to harvesting, of course we will be harvesting across the whole of the site, and therefore it's very important to incorporate access into and easy access around the plot itself. So I know that I'll be accessing from here, and I know of course that I'll access from here. When it comes to the watering, obviously this is the main access point, and I have obviously a path and some good amount of space here to run all the way down this side of the allotment, so I can get in with a wheelbarrow, get in with a watering can, very easy, in and out, and there's no problems in terms of access itself. So when it comes down to the irrigation, of course we have our water access point here, and these will all be spurred off from one central location. One of the key advantages of having this one central location is that when I'm coming to either maintaining it or ensuring that it's functioning properly, I only have to be looking in one area to ensure that the actual input feed is working as should, essentially. Of course, if I have one key line that runs across these 5 beds and a second line that goes directly to the tomatoes, then again, in terms of problem solving, am I able to identify problems much quicker by having 2 lines, which obviously feed into the whole of the system there. So in terms of this area, we're going to call this area kind of a low maintenance area. So we have our 2 low maintenance areas, and this one here, low maintenance area, and then here is our high maintenance area. So what's important when we're designing the actual plot and essentially allocating the particular beds is we've got to make sure that the access is very, very good for the high maintenance areas. This is going to be an area where you're going in and out plenty of times per day, if not many times per week at least anyway. So this area we need to really make sure is drilled down very good, because of the amount of footfall we're going to be going through there per week. We don't want things like erosion to be happening, and we want to make sure that this really is our main focus in terms of the complete plot itself. The other areas we can essentially make look nice, get them all prepared. However, once those are prepared, because of the low maintenance aspect of these particular areas, we aren't expecting too much erosion, we aren't expecting too much wear and tear on the side of the beds and things like that, because they are quite low maintenance areas. When it comes to harvesting, of course, the access is important to understand exactly where your harvest area is and how you're going to come into the actual plot as well as come back out. So this area here is essentially some free space here, and although it is in a good full sun area, what I've done is this area here, I can bring in the totes, I can bring in the wheelbarrow, I can put it straight in this area, and quite easily I can go to the different sections of the garden and come back to one centralized location. This is very good because you don't want to be having your access area here, you're harvesting over here, and you're having to come back and forth on multiple occasions because you're going to tire yourself out. And over the course of the season, it's obviously going to be much more enjoyable if you have your systems drilled down, but also if you're not making as much effort to get the same amount of output essentially. So I think we're all good there, guys. Just remember the 3 key criteria that are worth considering when it comes to allocating your particular beds, but also when it comes to designing the whole of the allotment or market garden in itself. Access, of course, is a crucial factor, and this really underpins everything we're talking about here. So of course, if you've got high maintenance area, your access needs to be really, really good. If you've got an area that needs a lot of water, put the irrigation there. If you've got something which is low maintenance in terms of the water and it's maintaining in terms of pruning, then obviously you want to get that to the edges of your plot or the furthest reach of your plot itself, and get those out of the way. Make sure that all the high maintenance areas are all centralized and are all closer to your access points. So there we have it, guys. Hope you found that informative and you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this, and see you again soon. Bye.